Hello, and welcome to the Multilingual World podcast. If, like me, you're fascinated by language and languages, you've probably asked yourself questions like, how multilingual is the world? Where are the world estimated 7,000 languages spoken? And which countries have the lion's share? How is this wealth of linguistic diversity managed by individuals, groups, and governmental authorities through language policies? And what are the consequences of such choices? Why do people stop speaking and transmitting their heritage languages and shift to dominant languages? What can we do to stop the 60 to 90% of the world's languages from disappearing? To explore these questions and many more, I will be interviewing influential academics and multilingual speakers living in Manchester to discuss aspects of multilingualism in different parts of the world, dispel the myths of inferior and primitive languages, and most importantly, we will discuss how language science contributes to improving access to better education and health, and how central it is to socioeconomic development and to fight social inequalities. I'm Dr. Serge Sagna. I'm a lecturer in linguistics at the University of Manchester, and I'm very excited to welcome you to the Multilingual World podcast. So we stopped at a point where I was asking how you explain the resistance, from political leaders to work with linguists. But when I talk of resistance, I'm probably talking about the resistance from the elite. On the other hand, we have the ignorance from other political leaders, like, regimes that, like the Abacha regime, that have, used French as an official language. So really, there's an ignorance of what the consequence of choosing an official language, is. So how do you explain that?
Well, in the case of politicians generally,
Yeah.
I think the attitude is that if it is something about health and you don't take it seriously,
Yeah.
it will have consequences. You need to have good policies for your health sector, the
Yes.
hospitals, and so on.
Yes.
In economics, if you don't take it seriously,
Yeah.
a lot will go wrong.
Yeah.
But in language, if you don't take it seriously, you can't see immediately that something is going wrong. It will take time for you to see that a lot is not okay. I think that's the one for politicians. As to the one about having a second national language,
Yeah.
I think that is purely out of spite.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
from spite, it is out of ignorance.
Yes.
If you know what a second language, official language is, you won't do that.
Yeah.
So it's spite, ignorance.
Yeah. But then when you think about it, if you look at it at a more micro level and you take health, if a patient comes to a doctor and the language of communication between the doctor and the patient is a language that the patient doesn't understand, then we are inevitably, going to get the wrong diagnosis. And
Yeah.
that can have fatal consequences and will often have fatal consequences. So even if you look at it at that level, there is urgency to actually choose, a language policy at that small micro level. And if you extend it to the health system, if we have the wrong, I mean, if not the wrong, but if health information is available in a language that the majority of the people do not understand, what it also means is that the majority of people do not know how to, you know, uh, uh, stay, let's say, healthy, or how to get the appropriate medical cure. So at that level also, I think the ignorance is from the politicians has consequences that they're not even aware of.
Ideally, what you just said is what should be what is happening, ideally. But these policies are not made for the man in the streets. They are not made for the common people. They are made for people who are elites themselves.
Yeah.
So they don't feel this. With some of these people, they already have connections with the doctors.
Yes.
And a lot of, they don't need to go to the level of the person who lives at 6:30 in the morning to
Yeah.
go and wait for someone for treatment in the hospital.
Yeah.
They have their own private hospitals.
Yeah.
Where they send their own people.
Mm.
You must have heard of people who go for medical treatment in the US, in France, in America all the time.
Yeah.
So these things don't hit them the way it hits ordinary people.
Yeah. But then the other thing is also that, you ask yourself how linguists, have tried to change things themselves, right? And you wrote it in one of, I can't remember which paper, where you were saying that linguists cannot afford to be pregnant women in an obstetrician's conference. I think it was a 2016 paper.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
2002, yeah.
Can you
I
elaborate on that?
remember. And my reference was to a professor who said, when you have a meeting of obstetricians, you don't invite pregnant women. Fair enough. That means exclude the speakers of the language. That's what he was saying in effect. So, and I then replied by saying, we
linguists
cannot afford to be pregnant women in a meeting involving obstetricians. So we must be good linguists, but that at the same time, we must not say that we are going to be doing only formal linguistics and we leave out concern with the community. That whether I'm a brilliant generative statistician or phonologist or whatever, the basic line is that I must be concerned about my community. And I said that part of the problem that we face as academics is that we are more concerned with writing papers which will earn promotion for us. When you do the kind of thing that I'm talking about, it doesn't fetch you any credit.
No.
They will look at it and say, this is a newspaper article.
No, it's not even worth that.
So that's why I say there are challenges for the linguists. And one main challenge is that if you see something about language policy, which you know is not going to work, you must speak up. Don't say that this does not concern me. If it is in education, as we have seen year in, year out, that people who finish in secondary schools,
yeah,
they get their school certificate. The examination, the school certificate examination is tough,
yeah,
and people fail a lot in English and maths. People say, oh, English and maths, those are difficult.
yeah,
But there's a correlation between failure in English and failure in the other subjects, whether it's physics or chemistry or whatever.
yeah,
So that the problem is simply that if you are not good in English, you
yeah,
won't be good in these other subjects.
yeah,
And therefore, the basic approach should be that we make sure that we use the language of the people so they can understand. If you don't understand English, you can't do well in the other subjects.
yeah,
And you can't do well in English if you don't have the proper concepts which you
yeah,
have had in your own language.
yeah,
I also refer to problem of health,
yeah,
that when you talk of HIV
yeah,
or COVID, which came after that paper, people now understand
yeah,
that you can't be talking of these things without using the language of the people.
yeah,
So, at least in the media, a lot of that is done now. Even there are publications
yeah,
about African languages, in Nigerian languages, about COVID, about HIV, and so on. These are the things that I mentioned. I also focused on the problem of advocacy. That it's not enough to say we want to expand this language, we will do technical terminology. I was saying,
So you were talking about
you can't say that.
Yeah.
Oh, it says your internet connection is unstable. Okay. You can't say that I'm doing something on the language, I'm expanding it, vocabulary, etc.
Yeah.
But you got to make sure that you advocate the use of the language.
Yeah.
And I mentioned a former student of mine, Professor Owolabi, who has been going to state assemblies to talk to them about the use of Yoruba as a medium in debates. And they laughed. How can we express budget and this is in Yoruba?
Yeah.
And he said to them, it can be done.
Yeah.
We can help you.
Yeah.
So, but he persuaded them to say, okay, we will try to use Yoruba on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
So we will use it on Wednesdays and see how we get.
Yeah.
And when they started using,
so you said, and they accepted to use it on Wednesdays.
They were making they were making jokes. They say, Madam Speaker, your head tie is beautiful.
That was the parliament debate.
But that doesn't require any terminology.
Okay.
That's what they think.
So they accepted to use Yoruba on Wednesdays, but they started.
But I said to them, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You start there, you will get somewhere later.
Yeah. But has it evolved? Have they started using Yoruba for more serious debates?
Yeah, this is it. Yeah, but the important thing is you start somewhere.
You start somewhere, yeah.
So today now, there are quite a number of houses of assembly that use Yoruba at least one day in the week.
Okay.
Quite a number of them.
Okay. Well, when you compare to the Senegalese situation,
the state houses of assembly, when they say we cannot use Yoruba for legislation.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, you can start with jokes, but later you will get to more serious matters.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I meant by saying you have to start somewhere.
To start somewhere. Yeah, yeah. I was thinking of the Senegalese situation where people do have debates on serious matters actually in Wolof. So everything is written in French, but the debates, the serious political debates, about budget, obviously there's a lot of code switching, but, Wolof is very, very, very present in the parliament. Probably, I haven't done a study, but I would say in terms of use orally, it's probably maybe more regular than French.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's possible. It's possible. I think the other thing with linguists is that, most politicians don't understand that to use a language in education or as an official language, linguists have to actually, help to produce an orthography. you know
Um,
Grammar books like the grammar that you wrote for Yoruba in 1966, these are important documents, and dictionaries, these are important documents, for education, and these are documents that have to be produced by linguists. No one else can produce them.
I,
So
I, I don't think politicians know about my grammar.
no, I don't think they do, but
The only people you expect to know about it are people who've gone to university
and doing linguistics.
and linguists.
Yes. But I think it's our job to also, you're talking about advocacy, right? It's our job to tell people, hang on a minute, before you make a policy, an educational policy, or using language as a, official language, it has to be written. And that means it needs an orthography. Linguists produce orthography. They can help you produce orthographies. You
Of
need,
course they can, yes.
yeah, but I don't think they know that.
You see, there are a number of problems.
Yeah.
One is, how do you formulate policy?
Yeah.
The second is, having formulated policy, how do you implement?
Yes.
And the problem in Africa generally is not about how you formulate. The problem is not formulation.
Yeah.
The problem is implementation.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will say, okay, that's the policy, but you don't implement. That's really the problem.
Yeah. 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 So, but you showed, if we come back to education for a bit, that in your early years of education, you were taught in Yoruba. And that, I imagine, would be in the 1940s, if I'm right. Was it in the 1940s that you went to school? Or late 1930s? Do you hear me?
I started school in 1936.
1936. Okay, that's even,
Yeah.
you see,
And
okay.
1936,
That was early.
because
Yeah, go ahead.
my father was the manager of the school.
Ah,
So they allowed me to start early.
okay.
Normally, when you start school in those days,
Yeah.
the colonial officials have introduced a method. If
Uh-huh.
your hand cannot go above your head to reach your ear on the other side,
Yeah.
the way I'm doing now,
Yeah.
you cannot be admitted to primary school.
I
Before
didn't know.
your hand can reach your ear like this, you
Yeah.
must be at least 6 years old.
Yeah. So say it again. So you said before your hand can reach your ear here.
Yeah, you have to move your hand, my right hand.
My right.
Left ear.
Yeah.
Yes. If you are 4 years old, you cannot reach that place. It's the colonial officials who introduced it.
Wow. I did not
So,
know.
under normal circumstances, I shouldn't have been allowed to start in 1936.
That's why I pushed it to the 40s.
I should. Yeah, that's it.
Because the earlier people who went to school in my village, they actually were, I mean, sometimes they were over 8.
Yeah.
Sometimes they did cattle minding first and, other things in the village before they went to school. So I maybe wrongly assumed that it was the general rule that you would start, school much later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you started in Yoruba, and how did it help you with your later education in English? And how did it help people, like, people's literacy around, in your environment?
Yeah. I think the most important thing is
Yeah.
development of concepts.
Hmm.
It's not just, well, the linguists talk about facilitation. You learn to write the sound you hear in one language, it helps you in the other.
Yeah.
That doesn't really attract me so much. I'm
Mm.
more interested in the ideas you have, the concepts you're able to have in your own language,
Mm.
being transferred now to
Mm.
another language.
Yeah.
So the moment you ignore those concepts,
Yeah.
what you are going to be getting is nonsense.
Yeah.
Like an inspector of education
Yeah.
went to a class, an English composition, oral composition.
Yeah.
He asked, the teacher was teaching and saying, I want you to talk to me about a dog.
Yeah.
So the children started saying, a dog has 2 ears.
Hmm.
A dog has 1 nose.
Hmm.
A dog has 1 head.
Hmm.
You can see the pattern. X has that.
Hmm.
So the inspector then said, stop asking them to do it in English. Ask them to talk about a dog in Yoruba.
Uh-huh.
And amazingly, they said,
Hmm.
a dog wags its tail when it's happy, when the owner comes in.
Hmm.
A dog perspires on its nose. Now, this is something you never will be able to do in English at that age.
At that age, yes.
And that is the importance of being able to use one's language in which one already has concepts developed.
Yeah. So you're able to think and then express your thoughts in that language
Yeah,
before.
this is it.
So you don't get to a stage where you have to learn the language first before you can express, your
That's
ideas
it.
in that
That's
language,
it. That's
which
it.
is what is generally the problem in, in situations where the language of instruction is not the language that the child knows.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely.
And one of the worst things also is the punishment, children being punished for, not speaking their language.
Yeah. we, we,
Oh,
we,
go ahead.
we all went through this.
Yes, even I
That
did.
in class, they would ask a monitor to check.
Yeah.
And if you spoke what they call quote unquote vernacular
Mm.
during this school session, your name
Yeah.
is put down.
Yeah.
And at the end of the period, all those who spoke vernacular will be punished. Either you write something, I will never speak vernacular, and write it 20 times, or you are given as beating, or you have to go and do some work on the field. Some teachers have devised a better method. The person who first spoke vernacular, they will write in him, they have a gong they pass on. You have it. Now, the next person, you pass it to him or her, and all the people who have the guns at the time will be punished. Nkuki said this thing about, you say, I am stupid, you write it several times. Or I'm a donkey, and you write it several times. Now, this is a way of really debasing African languages. Grew up trying to see that our languages are not good. They are terrible. They are vernacular. And that, psychologically, that's a terrible thing.
It's the psychological impact. I've always wondered about the psychological impact.
Oh, yes. It is a
in the case of Ngugi, there was the plate on which it was written.
You are not like, you cannot speak properly.
Yeah, exactly. So in the case of Senegal, I mean, it still happens today where children are wear to wear, a rope like with the skull of an animal. So it can be the skull of a dead animal or a long bone, that basically is called a symbol. Maybe short for symbol of stupidity, I don't know, but but it's still, at least until recently, was still there. Until 2 years ago, I know it was still there. So that is a problem. I mean, knowing that actually, mother tongue education was implemented and used since the 1930s, and I would say successfully. What do you think? How, again, that comes back to the other question. How much using Yoruba has contributed to, literacy among the Yoruba people where you grew up?
Sorry?
How much did using Yoruba as the language of instruction has contributed to literacy among the people, where you grew up? What was the impact, the impact of using Yoruba as a language, as a mother tongue education where you were growing up?
Oh, yeah. There was no objection to it at all. People loved it. At the time that, and we all went through this, they thought it was a good idea. It was only later, when the elitist thing came up, that people felt that starting schooling in your language can be a setback for you. So we then have the so-called kindergarten schools. Which are in English in Nigeria and maybe French in other places. So that even people who cannot afford it will struggle to send their children to the so-called fee-paying schools, because they think that the earlier you are able to learn to speak English, the better. So, and I keep telling people, earlier does not mean better. In fact, it could mean worse. Earlier, without the knowledge of the concept you have, it's not better.
One of the studies we talked about earlier was the one that was done in Burkina Faso, where primary school children two groups of primary school children were observed. So the first one did their education in French only. And the second one did, use, I think it was More as the main language of instruction.
Yeah, they started with two or so, yeah.
Yes, and French was a subject initially. So at the end of the primary school, when they did the national exam, the evaluation at the national exam, those who did their primary schooling in their first language in More outperform those who did it in French only, not only in mathematics in other subjects, but they also outperform them in French, which was the medium of instruction of the other group. When you see that, you wonder, why are these not generalized in the African continent?
Well, it's similar to an earlier experiment that we had in Nigeria, the 6-year primary project.
Okay.
Which says that in the 6-year primary school,
yeah,
Yoruba will be the medium of instruction.
For Yoruba speakers. For Yoruba
and English will only be a subject.
Mm.
And even at the beginning, the only person who will speak English to them is the teacher of English.
Mm.
But later they had to modify that because they didn't have enough teachers.
Enough teachers, yeah, that's always.
And the people who had the entire education in all subjects except English,
yeah,
did better than those who had the proper 3-year Yoruba followed by 3-year English. That's it. That's the traditional one, the one that I went through.
Yeah. So those who did 6 years of Yoruba, outperformed those who did 3 years of Yoruba and then 3 years of English.
Yeah.
Okay. So okay, so that basically, it links to UNESCO's proposition that the first 6 years of education should be in a language, at least that the child understands, or their first language.
Sorry.
So I was saying that what you are saying relates to UNESCO's proposition that the first 6 years of education should be in the child's strongest language, or maybe languages.
Precisely. Yeah. This is the only thing that makes sense. It's the only thing that makes sense. It's a language that the child already speaks.
Yeah.
And the transition from speaking to writing will be easier.
Yeah. Yeah. But then when you have multilingual settings, because I'm sure you have faced that in your work in Nigeria, where, you maybe in rural areas, it's easier to teach Yoruba, Igbo, or Hausa, or maybe any other language in rural areas. But when you move to more cosmopolitan areas, like cities, how do you deal with that multilingualism? How did you deal with it?
Yeah. In a multilingual situation, there will be obviously certain constraints.
Yeah.
And but we tend to exaggerate the multilingual situation because if it tends to happen in urban areas.
Yeah.
And if a child is born in Lagos, chances are that this child would live among the Yoruba and would have learned some Yoruba, no doubt. So this is the kind of situation that we are confronted with.
Mm-hmm.
But if in the end it is so mixed that it is not possible to have a common language, then you have no you have no alternative.
Yeah.
But the situation where this will happen is very limited. I have seen children coming from different parts. I mean, I lived in the university for most of my life, and children who come from parents from other places, they've been able to go to the common, we call it Aberdeen school, and they were able to learn properly. So they spoke their language at home, and they also used the language of the school.
So how is the primary education system now in Nigeria? Does it allow for the use of children's language, like if even for minority languages?
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. If you have a small group language people coming in,
yeah,
there are ways of doing it. The way they do it in London is to have, you must have some kind of thing for the children who come from different language areas.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Yeah.
But you do that in a situation where you have enough teachers.
Yes.
Where you don't have enough teachers, you can't say this is Pakistani, this is Hindustani, this is something you must teach them in their language. That's not going to be possible.
Yeah.
So in a way, there are cases where you will not be able to have the child's immediate language. But that's why we introduce the concept of the language of the immediate community, LIC.
Okay.
Language of the immediate community.
Yeah.
You cannot live in an area where you will not be able to interact. And for you to interact in the language of the immediate community.
Yeah.
So if your mother tongue is a minority one and you cannot use it, you will be exposed to the language of the immediate community.
Yeah. So that could be used as your medium of instruction. Yeah. So how about Pidgin? The Nigerian Pidgin, what role does it play in education? Or maybe what's the attitude of people towards using Pidgin?
Well, Pidgin has now become more important. In the past, Pidgin was just a language for the military, people mix together, police, soldiers, and so on. And when we have drama, they use Pidgin, for jokes and so on.
Yeah.
But now I think it's now taken more seriously. In fact, the linguists now write very well on Nigerian Pidgin. And there are people who write poems and things on Pidgin, in Pidgin.
Yeah.
So, especially when you need an audience, which is multilingual.
Yeah.
Pidgin can be very useful.
Yeah. But in education, are there efforts to use Pidgin as a language of instruction in some places? Or is there a debate around?
I don't think so.
Not yet.
I don't think so. I haven't seen it. Yeah.
Okay. So, Prof, let me ask, a few let me bring you a few points that people use to counter the idea that we can use African languages, for education and socio-economic development, and you'll comment on them if you want. Yeah. So one of the first thing that people say is that a nation needs just one language. It cannot function with like several languages. And they often give you the examples of England or France. What do you have to say about this? What do you answer? What answer do you give to someone who says that?
Well, I think there is an obsession with the figure one. A nation must have one language, one national anthem, one flag, one football team.
Yes.
Yeah. So the idea of unity coming from one, now it's a myth. If you look at the national football team of Nigeria,
Yeah.
you will find that most of them probably come from Igbo.
Oh, really?
Huh?
I did not notice that.
Yeah.
Why? That's interesting for the outsiders.
Yeah. No, but nobody cares when that happens.
Yeah, okay.
Nobody cares.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're all Nigerians when we are winning.
Yes. Yeah.
No, more seriously,
Yeah.
it's a misconception to say that you need, in the 19th century concept, you need one language, one nation.
Yeah.
There are nations that function with several languages.
Yeah.
And they don't say they are not one nation.
Yeah.
And there are countries that have only one language.
Yes.
And they fight all the time. Look at Somalia.
Yes.
So it's nothing to do with it at all. It's a misconception.
Switzerland is an example of a country that has a multilingual policy. Did you hear me? Hello?
No.
Are we frozen? Do you hear me? Are we back?
Yeah, now yes.
No, I was saying that Switzerland is an example of a country that has
Switzerland, yeah.
that has
Yeah.
four languages, but it still functions, properly. Yeah.
Yeah, they function, yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing is, the idea that African languages are too primitive to be used in education. You've already mentioned that, but
people who say that, I don't want to use it, but they must be stupid. How can a language be primitive?
We still have to
now listen.
Yes.
If people really know about language, they will find that some languages, which we call primitive, have terms that others, which we consider very important, do not have.
Yeah.
So you really need to show them that that's not the way language is.
Yeah.
And secondly, there is no concept that you want to express in a language that cannot be expressed if the need to do so arises.
Yeah.
The important thing is for the need to arise, and you will do it.
Yeah.
So the richness of a language, one example I give is you have pain. You say, I have headache.
Yeah.
But the kind of pain you have in Yoruba, you can
Yeah.
have about 6, 7, 8 different terms to
Uh-huh.
express the kind of pain.
Yeah.
Throbbing pain, hurting pain. So all these things are there. But
Yeah.
in English, I would just use pain.
Yes.
Would you say that's a language that is when
Absolutely.
I can express what is happening to me in several ways?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So yes, that's another misconception about languages, African languages. Are we frozen again?
yeah,
Oh yeah, no, I was saying that that's another
you
misconception.
said about Africa. Yeah, this is it. Yeah, about African languages.
Yeah. And another, well, maybe one last one is that uh, you cannot use, actually, not the last one. You cannot use pidgin in education because it's not a real language. Nigerian pidgin, I mean. So,
Oh,
so,
why don't they go to Papua New Guinea?
uh-huh. That's a good answer.
Why don't they go to Papua New Guinea?
Yeah. They will
Yeah,
ask you what is happening. They will
no,
ask
it can be used in education.
where pidgin.
The problem,
Yeah.
the problem that will combat teaching being used in education is they will say, if you are going to use pidgin, why not use English?
Yes.
Do you get the argument?
Yeah, I see what they're saying. Yeah.
Generally, you don't have native speakers of pidgin, but some
Yeah.
people will say there are people who are native speakers in Nigeria.
In Nigerian pidgin, yeah.
So, but in Nigeria, but I'm not talking of places like Papua New Guinea, which is, people, this is their language. But
Yeah.
people who are born speaking pidgin,
Yeah.
yeah, because there are many African languages. So
Yeah.
if you are going to have a policy
Yeah.
with mother tongue, with English, with pidgin,
Yeah.
when you also have a policy that says at secondary school level,
Yeah.
you must also have a language, a Nigerian language other than your own mother tongue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
what will be the place for pidgin? This is the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Prof, the internet is getting worse. I don't know why, but
I see pidgin by way of communication in the media. In fact, it's very popular for advertisement.
yes. In music too. Oh yeah.
Adverts.
In music too.
People make a lot of money using pidgin for advertisements.
Yeah. I was saying in music too, because I listen to Nigerian music and there's a lot of pidgin in, the music I listen to.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Prof, I think maybe we will stop for today. And unless you have something you want to cover that we haven't talked about, I mean, we could have a conversation for a week and we still have something to
No, no,
say.
no, no, no. When you keep a senior citizen for such a long time, did you hear me?
So I can't, it's breaking.
Did you hear me?
No.
I said, when you keep a senior citizen talking for a long time,
Yes.
next time you should have a doctor waiting by my side.
Yes, okay, I will. If I was near you, I would bring you. If I was near you, I would bring you a bottle of palm wine. I don't know if you like it.
Okay, shall we round up?
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. The internet is breaking, so I can't hear you. But yeah, thank you so much for taking time to speak to us. Thank you very much, and hopefully people will
Yeah.
take inspiration from our conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'll be in touch. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye. Before we go, remember that there is no education without language. There is no socioeconomic development without language. There is no meaningful political stability without good language management. Remember also that children and adults can function perfectly with multiple languages. So be a proud multilingual. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on our social media platforms, and see you very soon for another episode on the Multilingual World podcast.